There are many stories to get to from around the country, environmental crises, health concerns, and many more, but you wouldn't know that by watching the mainstream media. If you tuned into any of the other networks, you'll see all politics, all day, all the time. And we'll get to the presidential race too here as well later in the Fish Tank segment, but before we do, we are covering some major news about Zika, a major oil spill, and discussing the mainstream media's obsession with politics. Lionel of Lionel Media will join us for that. Marina Portnaya is covering Zika for us, but we'll begin today with Alexey Yaroshevsky covering the ongoing Keystone pipeline leak over in South Dakota. Alexey, breaking news of this leak being much worse than first reported, right?
That's right, Manila. We just learned that the initial report of 187 gallons of oil leaked is wrong. In fact, according to TransCanada company, it's almost 17,000 gallons of oil spilled into the groundwater and soil. Now, let me take you through what actually happened there in South Dakota. Now, we're talking about the Keystone pipeline, the first phase of it, Keystone 1, which runs all the way from Canada to the southern part of the United States. Now, the leak happened nearby the town of Freeman in South Dakota. It was first revealed by a landowner, Lawrence Schultz, on April 2nd. One day later, and there's still a lot of questions why it happened only 24 hours later, the TransCanada company shut the Keystone pipeline down, effectively stopping its operations for the moment while the leak is being determined. A day later, so serious it was that a no-fly zone was implemented by the FAA above that area. Now, it's also very confusing as to the amount of oil or other substances spilled into the water and the ground in that area. First, it was reported, as I've said, 187 gallons was spilled. Now, TransCanada confirmed it to the Associated Press Agency and to the local environmental authorities that the amount could be estimated at 16,800 gallons of oil, which is a huge oil spill by any standards. It's also unclear as to the composition of what actually spilled, because it is believed that this pipeline also carries a number of chemicals, including benzene, but the bottom line, the official bottom line from TransCanada, that the tar sands product was spilled into the ground. Let's look at the damage statistics of that particular pipeline. Now, this is the fifth incident at that pipeline since 2010 when it began operations. In the first year, when it began operating, there were 21 incidents on that pipeline. Now, as I've said, 187 gallons were initially reported. Now this number is 60 times more or 70 times more. This pipeline usually carries 500,000 barrels of chemicals per day. The interesting point here is that this time it was a landowner who discovered the leak, not the automatic system which is destined to discover those leaks. And according to the leaks coming from a Canadian whistleblower working on this Trans-Canadian pipeline projects, he said that the automatic system turns on when the pressure falls over 2% at the pipeline. So just look at those numbers: 500,000 barrels of chemicals per day, 2%, the minimum threshold where the automated system begins working, meaning that before 2%, those leaks will not be even discovered by the automated system, which is likely the case. Now, the landowner who discovered this leak says that everything's going to be fine, the company will compensate, but we spoke to one of the local activists who told us that things could be a lot scarier than we're led to believe.
From what I saw and those huge piles of dirt and all the work going on there and all the equipment, I mean, I can't imagine that was just a small spill. There's a farmhouse just almost right next to this pipeline route and where they were working. I would estimate about 300 feet away. And so my concern, like their water supply, tar sands product, is they dilute it down to make it flow, and there's a lot of toxins like benzene even included in the diluent, and you can't smell, taste, or see it in your water. So the only way you know that benzene is in there is to test your water. It only takes 17 drops of benzene to contaminate a 50,000 gallon water tower. It can actually kill somebody in 5 to 10 minutes, according to a federal agency on toxic substances.
So Ms. Mario was absolutely right there, saying that the scale of things may be a lot worse than we expected. But let's go back a few weeks ago when we covered the story in North Dakota about the local Standing Rock Sioux tribe protesting against the proposed Dakota Access Pipeline. As we remember, it crosses the Missouri River right next to the next to the tribe's reservation. Now, this is the very same kind of concerns that the tribe was telling me, that should anything happen to that pipeline over there, and as we know now, things do happen to pipelines, their whole existence would end because their water would be poisoned. Now, exclusively, we can bring you 3 letters which were filed by the federal agencies to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which is responsible for building this pipeline. Now, these letters are saying that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers must consult with the tribe. This is the first step, possibly to changing the route of the pipeline, which is something, of course, celebrated now in the Standing Sioux tribe. But you, again, Manila, as you mentioned in the beginning, will never hear this news anywhere on the major news networks. We'll keep a close eye on both the South Dakota story and the North Dakota tribe reactions.